The memories of that day are like a heavy weight on my heart, something I can't shake off. It was November 12th, 2001, a day that changed everything. The sky was gray, and there was a chill in the air as I walked through the front door after a tiring day at work. Little did I know my life was about to turn upside down. Laura, my rock and partner in everything, was standing on the balcony. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow around her, but her eyes were filled with tears, and my heart clenched with fear. I shouted desperately, my voice shaky and desperate. "Laura, please, you can't do this. Listen to me," I pleaded. The words tumbling out of my mouth, a mix of panic and sorrow, but in the blink of an eye she was gone. She jumped, and my heart shattered. The sound of my own screams echoed in my ears, mixing with the rush of the wind. It felt like time stood still as I realized what had just happened. I couldn't believe it. I was in shock, standing there on the balcony where she had been just moments ago. Her last words to me were still echoing in my head. She loved me. It felt like a cruel dream, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Before all this, Laura and I were a team, partners in every sense of the word. We laughed, we supported each other, and we faced everything together. She was the one who stood by me when I had nothing, no place to live, no car, and not much money. After we got married, she even dipped into her savings to help me start a small business. At first, things were tough, but as time went on, the business started to pick up and things were looking brighter. I got busy, spending more time with my business partners and clients. Nights became late, and I found myself at the bar, enjoying the company a bit too much. Days turned into weeks, and I lost track of time. I didn't even realize how long it had been since Laura and I had a proper meal together, or just spent quality time together. I was so caught up in work and everything else that I didn't notice the distance growing between us. I didn't even remember to celebrate our anniversary or her birthday. And she never complained, never said a word about it. She brushed it off, saying those things didn't matter, but looking back, I can see how much it must have hurt her, how much she must have felt alone. As time went on, I noticed her smile fading away. I realized how much I missed that smile, the way it lit up her whole face. So one day I decided to make things right. I wanted to surprise her, to bring back the happiness we used to share. I bought flowers and a necklace, the kind of things she loved. I was so excited, driving back home with a heart full of anticipation. I rushed into the building, practically skipping steps as I made my way to our apartment. Opening the door, I expected to see her face light up with surprise and joy. But the sight that greeted me was anything but joyous. Laura was standing on the balcony, tears streaming down her face. My heart sank, and I moved forward, panic welling up inside me. I called out to her, my voice desperate and filled with a fear I couldn't put into words. She turned to look at me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I reached out, trying to stop her, to grab her and pull her back, but it was too late. In an instant, she slipped from my grasp and disappeared from the balcony. The world seemed to stand still as I stared, disbelief washing over me in waves. I rushed downstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I hoped beyond hope that it was all a terrible mistake, that I'd find her safe and sound. But when I reached the ground floor, reality hit me like a punch to the gut. She was gone. In the days that followed, the weight of guilt and grief pressed down on me like a heavy burden. I blamed myself for not seeing the signs, for not being there when she needed me. It was only after everything had settled down that I discovered she had been battling depression. I found her appointments with a doctor, bottles of medication hidden away. My heart ached even more knowing she was fighting a battle I didn't fully understand. Why didn't I see it? Why didn't I make more time for her? The pain of losing her was almost unbearable. Every day was a struggle, a constant replay of what could have been. I turned to alcohol, trying to numb the ache in my chest, to drown out the guilt and regret that consumed me. Then, one night, something happened that I couldn't explain. I stumbled home, the world spinning around me. I collapsed on the couch, exhausted and defeated. And then, from the kitchen, I heard a sound, a gentle clinking of dishes. I blinked, trying to focus my blurry vision. I got up, my steps unsteady as I made my way towards the kitchen, and there she was, Laura, standing at the sink, washing dishes. My heart leaped in my chest, and I called out her name, hardly daring to believe my eyes. "Laura?" She turned around, her face pale and sad, but it was her, unmistakably her. My voice caught in my throat as I looked at her, the shock and joy warring within me. She stood there, looking at me with eyes filled with sadness. And then, as if defying reality, blood started to flow from her eyes, staining her face and clothes. I stumbled back, my own eyes wide with terror. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. And then, everything went black. I woke up on the floor, my heart racing and my body drenched in cold sweat. Had it all been a dream? The memory was hazy, a mixture of fear and confusion. I tried to shake it off, to tell myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Morning came and I got up from bed, my head still swimming with a mix of dread and uncertainty. As I walked out of my room, I froze in my tracks. The living room was spotless, everything in its place. It was as if someone had come in and cleaned up while I was asleep. A shiver ran down my spine, but I brushed it off. I had to get to work, to distract myself from the unsettling thoughts that swirled in my mind. I rushed through my morning routine, the memories of the previous night's terror still fresh in my mind. At the office, things were different. People avoided my gaze, and a heavy silence hung in the air whenever I entered a room. It was as if they knew something, as if they held some secret that I wasn't privy to. I tried to focus on my work, on anything other than the strange occurrences of the past few days. But my mind kept wandering back to that night, to the vision of Laura in the kitchen, the blood on her face. The day passed slowly, every moment stretching out like a lifetime. And when it was finally time to leave, I practically ran out of the office, needing to escape the suffocating atmosphere. I found myself in a bar, the familiar scent of alcohol and the dull hum of chatter providing some sort of comfort. I ordered a drink and downed it quickly, the burn in my throat a temporary distraction from my racing thoughts. As I sat there nursing my drink, I couldn't help but replay everything that had happened. The balcony, Laura's fall, the strange visions. It was all too much to process. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself that it was all a result of stress and grief, but deep down a nagging feeling told me there was more to it, that I was missing something crucial. I pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on the glass in front of me instead. The alcohol offered a welcome escape, even if it was just for a little while. When I finally stumbled home, the world was a blur of lights and shadows. I could barely keep my eyes open, my body heavy with exhaustion. But as I walked into the apartment, a sight greeted me that sent a chill down my spine. On the dining table, there was a plate of food, my favorite ribeye steak, cooked to perfection. Beside it was a glass of wine, the deep red liquid shimmering in the soft light. My heart raced as I looked around, my mind racing to make sense of it all. And then, as if materializing from thin air, Laura stood in the kitchen. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at her, unable to believe my eyes. I took a step forward, my voice trembling as I spoke her name. "Laura, is that you?" She turned around slowly, her eyes meeting mine. But they were no longer filled with sadness or pain. Instead, they were empty, void of emotion. And then, to my horror, blood began to trickle from her eyes, staining her face like macabre tears. I stumbled back, my heart racing in my chest. I felt a wave of dizziness wash over me, the room spinning as I struggled to maintain my balance, and then, just like before, everything went black. I woke up on the floor, my body aching and my head pounding. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a harsh light on the room. For a moment I lay there, disoriented and confused, trying to piece together the events of the previous night. As the memories flooded back, a sense of unease settled over me. It was as if I was caught in a never-ending loop, trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't escape from. I didn't know what was happening to me, or why these strange visions were haunting me. With a heavy sigh, I pushed myself off the floor and stumbled to my feet. I knew I had to face whatever was happening, to confront the reality that seemed to be shifting and bending around me. I walked through the apartment, my steps hesitant as I approached the kitchen. Part of me feared what I might find, but another part of me was desperate for answers. I peered inside, half expecting to see Laura standing there once again. But the kitchen was empty, the dishes neatly stacked in the sink. There was no sign of her, no trace of the blood that had stained her face. I felt a mixture of relief and confusion, my mind reeling from the contradiction of it all. As the days went on, the visions continued to haunt me. Laura's presence seemed to materialize out of thin air, her face twisted in a mixture of sadness and pain. And every time, the blood would flow from her eyes, a gruesome sight that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to make sense of it all, to find a rational explanation for what was happening. I researched, I questioned, and I even sought help from professionals. But no one could offer an answer that made sense. It was as if I was trapped in a nightmare, a reality that defied all logic. One day as I walked down the street, I saw Laura's car parked by the curb. My heart raced as I approached it, a mix of fear and desperation welling up inside me. Without thinking, I got in my own car and followed hers, my mind racing with questions. I thought I was just imagining things. She led me to a hospital, and my confusion only deepened. Why was she here? What was she doing? I parked my car and rushed inside, my steps quick and determined. I had to find out what was going on, to uncover the truth behind these strange occurrences. I followed her through the hospital corridors, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, a mix of anxiety and anticipation. And then she stopped in front of a room and my breath caught in my throat. I peered inside, my eyes widening as I took in the scene before me. It was a hospital room, and lying on the bed was me. Tubes and machines surrounded my lifeless body, the rhythmic beeping of the monitor a haunting reminder of the reality I was facing. Laura stood by the bed, her eyes red from crying. Beside her were my parents, their faces etched with grief. They held onto a sliver of hope, a belief that I might come back to them. But as I looked at my lifeless form, a sense of finality washed over me. It was then that the pieces started to fall into place, the puzzle of my experiences slowly coming together. All these illusions, hallucinations, or whatever you call that, those were fake. I then suddenly recall everything about that night, the night of the accident. After work, my colleagues and I went out for a drink. After consuming too much alcohol, being drunk and stubbornly, I insisted on driving home despite my friends offering me a safe ride. And in my intoxicated state, I had lost control of the car, causing the crash that had brought me to this point. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized the truth. I had survived the accident, but my body was now nothing more than an empty shell. I was brain dead, trapped in a world between life and death, my consciousness floating in a void of darkness. Regret washed over me, a tidal wave of guilt and sorrow. I wished I had listened to my friends, had made better choices that night. I wished I had cherished every moment with Laura, had been there for her when she needed me the most. As I stood there, watching the scene unfold before me, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I knew what I had to do. It was time to let go, to release myself from the prison of my own mind. I turned away from the hospital room, my heart heavy but resolute. The world around me started to fade, the hospital, the room, and even Laura slowly disappearing from view. And then, with a deep breath, I let go. I let go of the pain, the regret, and the guilt. I let go of the world I had known, the memories that had haunted me. And as everything faded to black, a sense of peace settled over me. I was finally free to move on, to find solace in whatever lay beyond. My journey had been one of pain and confusion, but in the end I had found the answers I had been searching for. So, as my consciousness slipped away, I held on to the memory of Laura's smile, the warmth of her love, and with that, I let go, embracing the unknown with open arms. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Look forward, subscribe, and click on the notification bell for more future stories. Also, share your thoughts in the comments below. Got any stories to share? Feel free to send us your stories through the email provided in the description. Peace.